And we'll start with the Shema. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. And our blessing for our learning. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. I hope the 17th of Tammuz yesterday was meaningful for you, a meaningful fast, easy fast, but meaningful. Obviously, as I said in my email, that normally in past years, when we say the 17th of Tammuz commemorates the breach in the wall of Jerusalem that led to the destruction of the temple, it sounds like okay, like that's sad, but doesn't sound terrible. And now when we talk about the walls being breached and what that means and the horror of that is, it's just everyone, it's just so hard to even think about. So hard. So now we are in the 3 weeks. We also talked about last week, the 17th of Tammuz, that the gematria of 17th of Tammuz is also equal to Yehi or Vayhi or, let there be light and there was light. And that we have the potential to fill this period of time, these 3 weeks, with incredible amount of spiritual light, which is what we are here to do in for any reason anyway, not just during difficult times. That is the mission of the Jewish people, is to fill the world with the spiritual light of Torah, God, the spirituality, and all of the values and everything that Torah stands for all of humanity. Parshat Pinchas, which we are on this week, is where we're going to start. And what I'd like to do is to talk about 3 different ideas for us to learn from, that we can take into our own lives for spiritual light and refocus, that we learn that are not necessarily obvious in the text, but that I wanted to share with you. So let's start with Parshat Pinchas, which is on page 877. That is chapter 25, verse 10. Parsha Pinchas is the follow-up to the end of last week's parsha, where there was the aftermath of Bilam's attempt to curse the Jewish people. Bilam tells King Balak, there's only one way that you can get God to be upset with the Jewish people, and that is he hates sexual immorality. And so if you can have the women of Moab seduce the men of Israel and bring them into illicit relationships and also then into idolatry, that'll do it. So the person who is big time, unfortunately, involved with that is someone from the tribe of Shimon. And his name is Zimri. He was a leader of the Jewish people. And the woman he was with was Cosbi, who was a princess of Moab. And Pinchas kills both of them with a spear because there was also a plague that God had sent, killing the Jewish people for participating in all of this, primarily from the tribe of Shimon. And the number of people who had been killed, just turn back one page to page 875. The plague that had started as a result of this wanton behavior is verse 9, the very last verse, which is really interesting because the parsha ends on a very sad negative note, last week's parsha. Those who died in the plague were 24,000. 24,000. That number should somewhat ring a bell. We talked about it actually last year. I would love to just give the same share again this year, but I'm not doing that. The 24,000 is the same number as the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva. So we understand that the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva were a reincarnation, a redo of these 24,000 men who were killed as a result of their behavior here in this parsha, and they have a chance for a redo. They don't succeed there either with Rabbi Akiva. His students died, but those numbers match up. So there's a lot that's said about that. So one of the things we need to keep in mind is that not only like God works in, when you say God works in strange ways, God works in ways that we cannot comprehend through circumstances, situations, and decades and millennia that we could not possibly link together because our minds are too finite to put it all together. But we need to know that all of these things match up in some way, and that there is a thread running through all of the narrative of the creation, the Jewish people, the rest of the world, and God's will, as it sounds kind of Christian, God's will be done. God's plan for humanity, God's plan for the world will be fulfilled one way or another. And there are a lot of ways that that can happen. So that even when something goes wrong, terribly wrong in one time period with one group of people, that doesn't mean that it's over. It doesn't mean that it's finished. Just because it's the end of the parsha doesn't mean it's the end of the story. The story keeps on going. So that is the good news, is that we should never feel in our own lives. And if that's true for the plan for the world, that's also true for each of us individually. There's no such thing as, well, that's the end of it. It's hopeless. Nothing can come from this. It's done. I can't do any better. We can never, ever say that there are always opportunities to redo, reset, and move forward. In the parsha of Pinchas is the one who gets the plague to stop. And he gets the plague to stop by killing the leader of who's leading all of the debauchery, which is Zimri from the tribe of Shimon. So it's another topic for another time, but this sin that the tribe of Shimon committed was so grave that they were not forgiven by Moshe, or you could say by God, by Moshe, even at the end of Moshe's life. We go to the end of the Torah on the parsha of V'zot HaBracha, when Moshe gives a blessing to each of the tribes, just as Jacob gave a blessing to each of the tribes before, each of his sons at the time gave a blessing to his sons before he died. Moshe gives a blessing to each of the tribes. He gives a blessing to every tribe except for the tribe of Shimon. He does not give them a blessing. That's a pretty big deal. Okay, so what they did really was considered unforgivable. It doesn't mean that it was unforgivable that you can't move forward, because we have wonderful people who come from the tribe of Shimon, but it is to show and state that what they did was cataclysmic, more cataclysmic than the sin of the golden calf, more cataclysmic than the sin of the spies. And it was really a fundamental foundational sin that they committed. So again, that's maybe next year, a story for a different time. But this was the tribe of Shimon, and the person who stops the plague is Pinchas, and he does it through what many would say from the outside is an act of violence, in that he kills them. In fact, it describes that he kills them with a spear that went through both of them at the same time through the stomach. Like, very, not something that we tend to think of as what people are doing. And the reward for this, that Pinchas is given a reward for this, and that is how the parsha opens up. Page 877, Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, Pinchas, the son of Eleazar, son of Aaron the Kohen, turned back my wrath from upon the children of Israel when he zealously avenged me among them, so I did not consume the children of Israel in my vengeance. Therefore say, behold, I give him my covenant of peace, and it shall be for him and his offspring after him a covenant of eternal priesthood, because he took vengeance for his God and he atoned for the children of Israel. This act, which on the surface is so violent, and it is violent, that we are not, when people say, the Jews are pacifists, we are not pacifists. We are for ultimate shalom. We are for ultimate peace. But very often, in order to create real peace, there needs to be an act of violence. And that violence, just to make it perfectly clear that he was incorrect to do what he did, that he is given what's called a brit shalom, a covenant of peace. So we listened to Shir on our way driving home this afternoon. Did somebody have a question? I was muting, but I see, yes, Marcia.
Sorry, I was a couple minutes late getting in. Zimri, was he a macher in the tribe of Shimon?
Yes, he was a
What
leader of
was
the
he?
tribe. He was a
He
leader. He
was
was
a
one of the. He was absolutely a leader of the tribe of Sheba.
he was the head leader or just one of the
I'm
leaders?
not sure if he was the head leader, but he was definitely a
A
leader,
macher.
leader of
Okay.
the house, the father's house of the tribe of Shimon. He was.
Okay.
He did. Other people followed. So there are lots of people like that. There's not just one person in a tribe who is that. But
Yeah. Now,
yeah,
was he a married man, a Jewish married man, or we don't
I,
know? It's
I'm
not
assuming.
important.
I'm assuming he was, but that wasn't the problem. Because
Okay.
as you know, the Torah allows for a man to have more than one wife. So it wasn't that
Sure.
it was another woman, it was that it was a Moabite woman and
It was more. That was my other question. She
it
was
was forbidden, and he was having sexual relations with her publicly in front of Moshe and Aaron and the tent of meeting. The whole thing was a complete disgrace. And they were also then getting involved with the idolatry, the Baal Peor. That was so it wasn't just it was the whole thing was a disaster. But we're going to move forward from that to talk about Pinchas because what we want to focus on is this breach shalom. So we listened to a shir, a class, as we were driving home this afternoon by Rabbi Ben-Zion Schaefer. And he talked about what is a breach shalom? What does it mean, a covenant of peace? So we need to know about Pinchas that he lived a very, very long time. He lived like a couple hundreds of years. I don't know exactly when. He goes into the land of Israel. He's not one of the people who dies in the desert. This is at the end of that. In fact, he said that he was one of the people that Joshua sent in to Rachav in Jericho as one of the spies was Pinchas. So he was one of them along with Caleb. So the two of them were spies, but Pinchas has that role. Also, the descendants of Pinchas become the Kohen Gadol, that he has not just like a Kohen, but also a Kohen Gadol. And we know from the tribe, not from the tribe, from the descendants of Aaron, that Aaron is known as a seeker of peace, which again, just because we are seeking peace, sometimes violence is necessary in order to reach peace. Fighting Nazis was essential for reaching peace in the world. So they're not mutually exclusive the way some people would like to think. But what is it for Pinchas to have this breach shalom? So there's a fascinating commentary that talks about Pinchas, that one of the things that when someone has shalom inside of them, that it was about the inner tranquility that he was blessed with. How does a person get inner tranquility? Some people go drugs, some people drink, some people shop, some people do all sorts of things in order to find their inner tranquility. It says, but what inner tranquility really comes from is from being aligned. Your body and your soul, your emotions, your intellect are aligned. So it creates an inner tranquility, an inner shlemut, an inner harmony. So interestingly, what Rabbi Schaefer was talking about was back in the 60s when the doctors were discovering the mind-body connection and the illnesses that are related to anxiety and to people who are not settled with themselves emotionally, where there is a disconnect between what they are doing and what they really believe and what they know to be right versus what they are doing, that trauma, it's like they feel it in their gut. It results in heart problems. It results in skin problems. It results in it manifests itself in lots of different ways when a human being is not aligned. Says that this is something that we need to ask ourselves questions about. And during the 3 weeks, this is a perfect time to ask this question, which is, am I aligned with my purpose? Is my life aligned with what I know to be the right thing to be doing, saying, focusing on, experiencing? And it doesn't mean like if any moment that at any given moment I'm doing something profound. It just means that my life is aligned. And when there isn't that alignment, it creates not only a spiritual peace, but actual physical peace. a physical sense of well-being, which doesn't mean that everything goes smoothly in your life. It doesn't mean that we don't have problems. It just means that we are aligned, and that now people can't experience this directly. But in the olden days, when you had a camera that had something to focus, and you would see that like the nose was over here and the rest of the head was over here, and you would say like, it's not in focus, it's not aligned. So now it's harder for us to understand that as a metaphor, but it's still true that we need to align ourselves. And when we're trying to say is, are my values aligned with the values of the Torah? Is my behavior aligned with the Torah? What I know of the Torah to be true. This doesn't mean, am I a perfect person? Am I a perfect Jewish person? It means, am I a growing, striving, constantly adjusting person? Always focusing on how to become more aligned. So that is called shalom. And it says it actually leads to a longer life. They always interview people, who have lived a really long time and ask me like, what's your secret? And they may be like doing all, some things, I had to pack a cigarette every day, or I don't know, do certain things, but their alignment of, I was happy, I wasn't jealous, I saw the good in things, I was grateful, like my life was aligned. And that actually creates an inner peace, something for us to seek as well. And when there is that at the micro level, it becomes easier for us to manifest that at a macro level. That when I am aligned, that gives off a certain energy that is what the world needs. Lie detector tests were designed to pick up on the disconnect between what people said that they did or didn't do and what they actually did or didn't do, because the body registers the disconnect. Unless somebody is like a hardened criminal, and then actually that person maybe is like so disconnected, but the average person, even if you can lie, but your body registers the lie because it can tell. So it's like our neshamas are talking to us all the time in a very quiet voice. When we align our actions in our lives with our neshamas and what we're here to do, says we will create this brit shalom, this inner peace, and we'll add, God willing, life to our years and years to our life. We should all be blessed with that inner peace. So that's step number one of how Pinchas helps us understand that. The second piece in this parsha that I want to focus on is that this is the parsha where Moshe asks for, once he's told that he's not going to be going into the land of Israel, he asks for a new leader. So let's take a look at that and see what Moshe says to God here. Page 889. It's so sad. I think it's sad. Chapter 27, verse 12, page 889. Hashem said to Moshe, go up to this mountain of Avarim and see the land that I have given to the children of Israel. It's like, you can go look at it. You shall see it, and you shall be gathered unto your people. You too, as Aaron your brother was gathered in, because you rebelled against my word in the wilderness of sin, and the assembly strife to sanctify me at the water before their eyes, etc., etc. And Moshe doesn't answer back about that. But what does he do? His concern then becomes verse 15. Moshe spoke to Hashem, saying, may Hashem, God of the spirits of all flesh, appoint a man over the assembly who shall go out before them and come in before them, who shall take them out and bring them in, and let the assembly of Hashem not be like sheep that have no shepherd. Hashem said to Moshe, take to yourself Joshua, son of Nun, a man in whom there is spirit, and lean your hand upon him. You shall stand him before Eleazar the Kohen and before the entire assembly, and command him before their eyes. So this is the choosing, the selection of Joshua. So the commentaries say that Moshe really was hoping, as many fathers hope that their sons will go into the family business, Moshe was really hoping that one of his children, one of his sons, would take over for him, just like the Kohanim. A Kohen Gadol is often passed down from father to son, father to son. He was hoping that one of his sons would be selected. And God doesn't say no, he just says who is going to be selected. And he said, take Joshua. Is Pinchas the reincarnation of Eliyahu? You've got it, yes, and the exact opposite. Eliyahu is a reincarnation of Pinchas. So Eliyahu Hanavi, the prophet, is considered a reincarnation of Pinchas. And so he has, not only did he have a Brit Shalom and live a long life in this world, but that he also comes back as Eliyahu Hanavi. So the two of them are connected through their devotion and their zealotry, actually, for God. So yes. So Joshua is the one who is designated by God. And the question is why? So first, let's look at how Moshe addresses God. He says in verse 16, may Hashem, God of the spirits of all flesh, appoint a man over the assembly. We have never heard Moshe address God like this. God of the spirits of all flesh, what does that even mean? The spirits of all flesh, this is what he's asking for, is what is the most important, critical need for a leader is somebody who can understand and appreciate the people they are leading. You can be a brilliant tactician, you can be a brilliant military commander, you can be a great orator, you can have all sorts of amazing skills. At least when it comes to leading the Jewish people, you have to be somebody who understands the people who you are with. And what's the question? Let's take a look at just the commentary. If you have the Stone Chumash, take a look here in the commentary below the line for verse 19. When it says, and command him, that God says to Moshe, you shall command him. But then it says, it doesn't say what he should command him about. But the commentary fills it in from Rashi and the Ramban. It says, tell him that the people can be troublesome and stubborn, and that he must accept their shortcomings. Instruct him regarding his duties as a leader. The people can be troublesome and stubborn. I don't know if you've ever heard that about Jewish people. Troublesome and stubborn. Things must have changed since then. I'm like, we're still the same. That's how we know we're still the same people. Troublesome and stubborn. And that's considered a challenge, but it's okay because this stubbornness is what has allowed us to survive all of these millennium and be able to thrive because we're stubborn and we're troublesome. We are always have a complaint about something. Something's just not quite right. And this is a good thing because we have an image in our mind, each of us individually, of what right is and what that means. And sometimes it gets down, to a low level where my coffee's not hot enough. It's not the right seat in the restaurant. I want it to be on the aisle. And now I'm by the window. And why are you doing this? And why are you doing that? And I don't like that. And why did you sit me here? And that speaker was terrible. Everybody has an opinion because everybody is walking around with an image in their head of what perfection looks like, which everyone needs to have. And the beauty is we don't want everyone to have the exact same version of that. We are uncomfortable with unanimity. When everyone agrees, if someone says everyone agrees that this is the case, then you know that something has gone wrong because that's not how people are and that is not how Jews are. So even in the Sanhedrin, in the Supreme Court, on a case, if there was a unanimous decision, it was thrown out. It's not possible that 70 people all agree. Not possible. It isn't possible. So when people joke and say 2 Jews, 3 opinions, and it's ha, 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 it's there better be. You better have people who have different perspectives because that's what makes up the Jewish people. By definition, people who have different perspectives, when they come together and are able to unify, not homogenize, they are going to create the perfect world. But the perfect world does not mean the same. So what's needed for a leader of the Jewish people, especially going into the land of Israel, where the land is going to be divided up, all of the tribes, people always talk about it can be a little, even though many wonderful people have met their spouses in university, it says it can be a little challenging that when you are in an environment where there is more homogeneity of what you're doing, what you're experiencing, the classes you're taking, you might think you have more in common with someone than you actually do. And then when you are out in the world, it's like, what did I think I had in common with this person? Just because we both had, bio at the same hour, the same professor, like I thought like my life was going to be with this person forever. It doesn't necessarily work that way. The Jewish people in the desert have been on a pretty uniform path. They've been all kind of leading a relatively similar life. The man coming down, Miriam's well, learning with Moshe, moving their tents all as a group. It wasn't like some tribes went on this direction and some people in another direction. They're going to be going into the land of Israel, where just today in our driving, we went, even the terrain that we were in was like went from the rolling agricultural hills to the desert with sheep and camels and goats. It's like, it's so different. Everyone's going to be doing their own thing, and they need to be able to do that. And the leader needs to be somebody who can get it all. So remember, like we talk about, like in the Wild West, the conflict between the ranchers and the farmers. I need my land for herding. Well, I need the land for planting. You have a built-in conflict, and it's not bad. It's just something that needs to be managed. So what Moshe is asking for is like, we need somebody who can get everybody and can bring everyone together so the whole thing doesn't fall apart once we get into the land of Israel. And that's when God says, Yehoshua, Joshua. Now, how did God know, or what about Joshua made him the one who was the ideal person to lead the Jewish people? Has anybody heard Midrashim? This is now going to be based on Midrash and the commentary. What did Joshua do that developed him as a person who would be able to understand people, deal with people's shortcomings, not lose it, and be successful in settling the land of Israel? Somebody have heard anything? Etta.
I've heard that he stayed in the tent with Moshe, helping him and learning from him and cleaning up the base medrash, whatever. Like, he was just a very helpful person.
Yes. And you'd say like that, try applying for a job of a CEO and say, well, my qualifications are I stayed and cleaned up after every meeting and set up the chairs and, did the projector. You'd be like, okay, you can be the audiovisual person, or you can be the events coordinator. Like that, what does that have anything to do with leading the Jewish people? Except you are exactly right. That's exactly what our sages say. It says that that Yehoshua every morning set up Moshe's base medrash. So just picture, your conference every morning, or the shul where you don't have fixed seats, but you have seats that are stacked up. Every morning he set up, every evening he cleaned up, and he did this day in, day out for 40 years. First of all, anyone who can stick with that job for 40 years has tenacity. It's like, okay, you earned something. But what was it about even that? Says someone who is willing to be literally in the lowest level is somebody who gets to know the people and is in the thick of it. And he also got to know the people's shortcomings, because I don't know about you, if you've had this experience, you ever go to a room, an all-purpose room, or a shul or something after a kiddush, or after people have been learning? What does it look like? It's a disaster. People don't pick up after themselves. They leave the cups, they leave the half-eaten cake, they leave the whatever, they move the chairs how they want, they don't put their books away. And every day, Yehoshua cleaned everything up and put everything back in order. Now, the average person would say these people are a bunch of ungrateful, inconsiderate, rude, blah, blah, blah. They would be carrying on. Yehoshua just accepted that. This is how people just are. And he knows who's the one who always leaves his tallis on somebody else's chair, who's the one who always leaves their half-eaten coffee with a napkin that's drenched and put in there and like has too much liquid in it to put in the trash and not enough to put in the sink because they got a wet napkin. It's like, who are these people? It's like seeing everybody's shortcomings. It's like when you live with people and you see where they squeeze the toothpaste and they didn't pick up themselves and their socks are on the floor and all these things. He saw that in everyone. So at the same time, he was a student of Moshe at the most esoteric, highest level. Usually people are in one place or the other. Either they're comfortable in kind of like ground floor things or at the top. But for Yehoshua was the person who was the do everything, be for everyone person. And this is what allows him and is the person where it says he has spirit. What is the spirit he has? He has the spirit to be able to understand and appreciate other people's spirits and to be able to lead them. And then miraculously, which you can read if you ever study Sefer Yehoshua, the book of Joshua, he becomes a brilliant military commander. We know he was the one who was in charge of the battle against Amalek after the Jewish people crossed the sea. So he has these other qualities, and God invests him with everything he needs to manage the people. So what is this key for us? What is this key for us? It says, if we want to think, how can I become a more understanding person? How can I become a person who's more open to other people, more respectful, appreciative, understanding? Sometimes we think we should do something. I don't know what we think we should do. This is clean up after other people. Be the person who cleans up with a smile on their face. It says, this is just how people are. This is just how people are. And they're all good people. And I recognize their talents, their gifts, their shortcomings. They're quarrelsome, they're difficult, and I love them all. It says, this was Yehoshua, and he's the one who Moshe taps at God's selection. And this is with Moshe's own disappointment that it wasn't going to be one of his sons. His sons weren't the ones. The only thing they had was the fact that they were Moshe's sons, but they had not attached themselves to Moshe or to anything in any other way. They weren't deserving. And leadership for the Jewish people is earned. It has to be earned. And it's earned by people who are humble. It takes humility to be the person who is stacking the chairs and cleaning up after everybody else, and to do it without being annoyed and frustrated. So Yehoshua is tapped, and God is very clear that Moshe should have him speak to the people while Moshe is still alive, so that nobody would think that he wasn't really chosen by Moshe and that he usurped the leadership on his own. So that is done, and Yehoshua addresses the people as well. So how to become a better leader? So maybe not take a leadership training class necessarily, or take that, but also take on, cleaning hacks for cleaning up a room quickly and stacking chairs, putting away books, and making things neat and nice for everybody else. So that is humility, training in humility. Step 2. Step 3 is very interesting and a little more esoteric, but I found it intriguing, which is after we have this here going on with Pinchas, we have the choosing of Joshua. Then, before we had that, we had, which we're not going to actually talk about today, is on page 887, which is Zelophehad's daughters, the ones who want to have they want to have land given in the land of Israel because their father only had daughters rather than sons. And through their merit, which is that they loved the land of Israel and they wanted to have a portion, and they are given that. The only criteria are that they have to marry men from their own tribe, because their allotment you can't have your allotment of your tribal allotment migrate to another tribe, because then that causes a problem with the other tribe's land. So they had to marry. It's not like they had a choice of like 2 people. There were thousands and thousands of people though anytime anyone feels like that they have something that restricts them in any way, they feel restricted. But it says that they married men from their tribe and the land went to them and it stayed within their tribe. So we have these big events. And then the next thing we have is page 891. We have the beginning of all of the offerings, the korbanot, for the holidays, for Shabbos, for Rosh Chodesh, but it starts off with the tamid, the continual daily offering. So I restate what I was going to say. There aren't 3 points, there are 4 points, and this is the third one, and it's not so esoteric, it's straightforward. When it says the tamid, the continual daily offering, this is probably one of the most important qualities that I'm talking to myself about this. The tamid offering is about being consistent. It says the things that we do consistently are really what define us. The things that we do sporadically don't define us. They are extra, they are a commentary. But what we do consistently, day in and day out, those are the things that define us. This is really a PS on Yehoshua, on Joshua, that his tamid, his consistency in what he did with Moshe and for Moshe built him into who he is. So we know this. Our exercise routine, our davening routine, our Jewish learning routine, our house cleaning routine, our eating. It's like, I love to think that Shabbos doesn't count in my diet. I would love to think that my body doesn't recognize that what I'm eating on for those 24 hours, 26, 28, 30 hours don't count, and Shabbos leftovers also. I would love to think that, but it's not true. Tamid is day in and day out. So what this is asking us to do is to really look and see what are the things that we do day in and day out for the good and for maybe the not so, the opposite, things that we do that are not so healthy for us, either spiritually, emotionally, physically, in any way. And what are something that we could do, which is why it can be a small thing. It's more important that it be consistent than it be big. So just taking a small step and say, this is going to be my tamid offering. We all know that in the synagogue, most synagogues have a ner tamid, that they have an eternal light. It says, what makes that light so meaningful in a synagogue? There's brighter lights around, and yet what's significant about that light, it's usually a small light. It's not lighting up the whole place, but it's always there. It's the fact that it is tamid, a matmid. So somebody who does something on a regular basis is called a matmid, a person who is always can be counted on to do a certain thing. So you could say it's a habit, which is fine. And it doesn't mean that we necessarily give the greatest kavana attention to it. It just means that we're consistent in doing it. So you're familiar with Daf Yomi, with people who study. Perseveres, exactly. It builds perseverance. It actually builds our character. I think there was it a Navy, some armed forces person who spoke at a graduation who said the most important thing that he was going to say to the graduates is that every day they should make their bed. Make your bed every day, and you will be successful. Okay, so I don't know if that's true necessarily, but I mean, Chinese saying is a lively ant gets more done than a sleeping ox. Exactly. That's true also. So just doing something, and it can be like one small thing that I do every day that is my tamid offering, but to have some intention for it, starting with this parsha of what is one thing, or identify something. Don't pick something you never do and then say, I'm going to make this tamid, because that's going to be a failure. Choose something that you're pretty regular doing, that you know it should be done more often or more consistently, and work on that becoming your tamid offering, and see it as the avoda, as the service that it really is. This is an avoda, is to do something consistently. tamid. So now we have our three things of to be aligned like Pinchas and to have a brit shalom, to be able to align ourselves with our values, our actions, our thoughts, all of it as much as we can. The second is to be like Yehoshua, to be like Joshua, and to do the small, unimportant, what seems to be unimportant, not so like the scut work on behalf and benefit of other people, to build appreciation and humility and acceptance for others' shortcomings as well as their greatness. Yes, exactly, Cheryl. Like saying a specific Tehillim every day for the hostages, that's a great example. A Tehillim can be for the hostages. That's a great one. And then something that you're just going to do all the time. Or you can say, I'm going to say one chapter of Tehillim every day. And you can pick, there's some very short Tehillim. You can say very, very short ones. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to pick like the longest one. Pick something really short. Or it can be, I'm going to make a blessing over the first thing I drink in the morning. Like if you have a morning cup of coffee every morning, I'm going to say a blessing over that. Or I'm going to say the Shema. Or I'm going to say Moda'ani when I wake up. Or I'm going to, I don't know, whatever it is that is something for you to become something, to be a tamid. When we do that, we build ourselves. All these little things create a difference. And then we become a ner tamid. And it changes us. And it also points out to us how much we can really grow and how much we can become. Because part of the brit shalom, part of this inner alignment is when I can say, I know that every day I'm going to do X, that builds self-esteem. And that builds an equanimity inside ourselves and an inner tranquility. Is I know I can count on myself to do this. And when we do that, it spreads into other things and actually gives us koach, gives us strength to do other things that might be harder and more difficult in our lives. Okay, now comes the esoteric part. After that, we have all of these offerings for all of the different holidays, and it starts with the Tamid offering, chapter 28, the beginning. And then if you see the rest of the entire parsha, look at it. It goes on for till page 899. Okay, we have the whole rest of the parsha are offerings. We read this parsha for every holiday. Every holiday, when we read the additional Torah reading, it's going to be from Parshat Pinchas, and it's going to be about these offerings. So let's talk about something that certainly would never occur to us. So we could have a conversation about why do we have to have offerings, which we're not going to talk about because we don't know, except that God commanded them. And we see that there are specific numbers of everything that is being offered. So let's just take a look, starting with, we're going to start with the chapter 28, verse 9. So on the Sabbath day, 2 male lambs, etc. And that's where we're at. And then on Rosh Chodesh, it's going to be 2 young bulls, 1 ram, 7 male lambs, etc. And then there's also going to be a goat. And Pesach, it talks about there's going to be a Pesach offering. And let's look here, we're on verse 19. 2 young bulls, 1 ram, 7 male lambs, etc. And there's going to be something that's going to be offered each day of Pesach. And then on Shavuot, it has the offering for Shavuot, the number of animals, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and on Sukkot, we have the unusual offerings, which are that they descend throughout the week. On the 15th, and this reads a little bit like Partridge in a Pear Tree, only the reverse. Chapter 29, verse 12, on the 15th day of the 7th month, Holy Convocation. And now go down to verse 13. In the middle of that, 13 young bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs, etc., etc., etc. And verse 16, 1 male of the goats. And on the second day, verse 17, second day, 12 young bulls, 2 rams. So the young bulls declines, the rams stay the same, and the 14 male lambs stay the same. All the others go down until we hit Shemini Atzeret. And Shemini Atzeret, the 8th day, verse 35, That is a whole separate thing because that's the day that is just for God and for the Jewish people. That's like the Sunday brunch after the Simcha. That's just us. The rest of the offerings are the rest of the offerings. So this part, especially after the drama of Pinchas and the daughters of Zelophehad, the choosing of Joshua, this feels like filler. Like, why is this here? Why is this here? So this is so fascinating. And this comes from the Baal HaTurim. The Baal HaTurim is a commentator who looks at numbers. He looks at numbers and letters. So he's right up my alley. So just want to offer this out here. So just so you can see that all these things are connected here. There is a verse, and let's go back to it. That is, hold on one second. It is, I wrote this in pencil, so I can't see it so well. Look at the Shemini Atzeret. Actually, look at verse 33. Okay. And their meal offering and their libations for the bulls, the rams, and the lambs, and their proper numbers in their requirements. Okay, verse 33. Now, in the English, that's not going to do anything for you. So look in the Hebrew, and you're going to look in the margin where it says the letters Lamed Gimel, which is 33. And you're going to look at the words. I'm going to read it to you in the Hebrew. And what you're going to listen for is the ending sound of each word. Umin chatam v'niskehem laparim la'elim v'lakvasim b'misparam kamishbatam. What sound is at the end of that? Every single word there. Did you hear them? Mem. Mem. Every single word in that verse ends with a mem. That's not normal. Okay, that's just not normal. However, there is one other place where you have a sentence that also all the words end with a mem. So we're going to take a look at that and find out what's the connection. So the connection is that one of the things we're going to ask is, which we never really ask, why this number of offerings? Why this number of animals, whether it's the bulls or the sheep or the lamb or whatever it is, why all of these very specific numbers? These numbers, if you take them and you add up how many animals are offered, starting with Shabbos until the 7th day of Sukkot, and you add up the numbers multiplied by the numbers of days, like so for Pesach, you're offering those animals on for 7 days, not just the one day it's describing, it's times 7. If you add those all up and take into consideration all the Rosh Chodeshes, so you have the description of the Rosh Chodesh offering, but how many Rosh Chodeshes do we have? We have 12 Rosh Chodeshes, and if there's a leap year, then we have 13, because there are 13 months. If you add those all up, you're going to get the number 550. Okay, you're going to get 550 is how many animals offerings there were during the year for these purposes. Okay. What's 550? Let's take a look. And what is going to lead us, where we're going to find this number exactly, is we're going to go to Parsha Vayishlach. Parsha Vayishlach is on page 173. And this is when Jacob has left Laban, his father-in-law, and he's about to meet up with his brother Esau. He's going to meet up with Esau. And what does he do before he meets with Esau? What's his preparation that he does? Does anybody remember what he does? He does 3 things. It says that he prays. Patricia, yes.
Well, doesn't he divide up his family?
Divides up his family as a military strategy. He divides up his family. He davens and he sends a gift to his brother. He sends a gift, and let's take a look at the gift that he sends. So if you want to take a look at chapter 32, verse 14 through 16, lists the animals that he's going to give. And here's what he gives to Esau, his brother: 200 she-goats, 20 he-goats, 200 ewes, and 20 rams, 30 nursing camels, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 20 she donkeys, and 10 he donkeys. I'll do the math for you. What does that add up to? 550. Aren't you surprised? 550 is a big surprise. It's like, okay. And what else do we have? We also have that in the verse here. Hold on one second. You have also a verse that everything ends with a mem. And let me just say, I just lost it. Hold on. It is in verse 15. Again, you won't see it in the English, but in the Hebrew, verse 15, which is Tetvav, Izim, Matayim, Utshiim, Esrim, Rechelim, Matayim, Ve'elim, Esrim. Every word ends with a mem. Those mems, like those are the only two psukim in all of the Torah where every verse ends with a mem, and those two things are connected, 550 animals. So it's like, okay, and what does that do for me? Okay. The question is, was it the right thing to do for Jacob to give his brother a tribute, to give him a gift before he meets him? He's not held liable. He isn't held liable. It's like, this is what you need to do sometimes. However, in the very, very fine measure of the level of Yaakov, it was considered not quite the complete emunah, faith and trust in God. Dividing his family, okay. Davening, for sure, okay. But he should have had more trust that God was going to save him and not give a tribute to Esau. When someone gives a tribute to somebody, they are saying that that person has power over them. And the act of giving the tribute actually gives the power. The things that we give to, our tributes to, our time, our money, our attention, our focus, is as if we are giving gifts to that. And we are saying, you are powerful, you are important, and I need to give you something. It says a tribute, it doesn't say a present. Okay, it's like, this is a tribute. There's a little bit of a problem with that. And the problem is that actually gave Esau some power. And the power is going to play out in an interesting way. So let's go back to that sentence and see how many words ending with mem were there in that sentence. Going back to Tetvav, Izim, Matayim, Utyashim, Esrim, Rechelim, Matayim, Ve'elim, Esrim. There are how many words? There are 8 words there. Those 8 words, those 8 mems, those mems are going to stand for malchut, for kingship. It says Esau, the Edomites, Esau is going to have 8 kings who are going to rule before the Jewish people ever have one king. That they are going to come onto the scene and they are going to have this power. And they are listed at the end of this parsha of Vayishlach, each of the 8 kings. So let's take a look at it, and you can see it. Hold on a second. Page 197. Verse 31, chapter 36, verse 31. Now these are the kings who reigned in the land of Edom before a king reigned over the children of Israel. And it goes through and it lists each of their names through 32 through verse 32 through 39. And after it goes through the begots and the begots, there are 8 kings. It says that those 8 kings were the result of the power of Yaakov giving a tribute to his brother, which he probably really shouldn't have given, that he should have had more faith. So what happens to these 550? Yes, Etta.
Just a question. I thought he's rebuked a little bit, anyway, for not giving Dinah to Esau as a wife.
Yes.
So, because she might have made him change his ways. So
yes, that would have been a So, and when we say that there are these perspectives, it's at the same time recognizing there's no way he could give his daughter Dinah to somebody who was as terrible and hope that she was going, but it was to say that someone like Dinah could have saved Esau, could have been and had an impact. But then, people talk about, abusive relationships, and a woman should never feel that she's the one who's responsible for an evil, bad person not being a good person. I'm sorry. Leah, no, not Leah. Leah was to have been the original wife of Esau, but once Jacob was married to Leah, then for sure he would not give Leah his wife. The next was Dinah but it said in the Midrash that he put Dinah in a straw basket to hide her from Esau's eyes, because Esau was looking at the women from the first thing. It's like, oh, who are these women? So it's very complicated. What we need to know is that things operate on very multiple levels simultaneously, and they're not flat and they're not disconnected, and they interrelate. So we have these 550 animals that Jacob gives to Esau, which was like directing his resources in not quite the best way. And what's the tikkun for that? What's the repair of that? Our 550 animals that we are going to direct to Hashem through each of our holidays, Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh. And the message to us is that which we give our resources to, we are empowering. We are giving them what we give our attention to, even our talking attention. What we talk about, we are empowering. It's one of the reasons we talk about like not speaking Lashon Hara. That when we say negative things about other people, we are causing something to actually happen. So what we give our time, our attention, our words, our money, our enthusiasm to, those are all, you could say those are all tributes. We're giving tributes to something. We need to check to see what we are giving to. So the korbanot that are linked between these two verses that have these mems are connected, so that it's like Hashem puts in the Torah, like, oh, a sentence that ends, only somebody like the Baal HaTurim would notice this. Oh, this sentence all ends with mems, and this sentence all ends with mems. And isn't that interesting? It all has to do with the offerings, the ones that went to Esau versus the ones that are going to Hashem. So when we say we want to give everything for, and this aligns with how we started off, when we align our actions, our thoughts, our resources in a way that is consistent with our values, our personal mission, what we are supposed to be doing in this world, we will have a Brit Shalom. We can work at the same time, and we can know that if I am arranging chairs in my shul after the meeting, and I'm picking up and cleaning, I'm doing the dishes, I'm doing the laundry, those are all for the same purpose. There is not a disconnect. And the person who can do all of that and see whether I am learning with Moshe Rabbeinu the esoteric insights into the most secrets of the Torah, or I'm picking up the coffee cups from last night's shir, it's all part of the same project. And then I am aligned. And I know that I'm giving my time, my attention, my effort to what I really want to see promoted and magnified in this world. And when I do that, I will be a person that has a fullness about me that gives me life in this world, and certainly life in the world to come. So God willing, we can take these to heart in our own lives and follow in the footsteps of these great people. We can correct small mistakes and errors that were made by our ancestors and get ourselves into the right path. Thank God we have a Torah that gives us a way to align ourselves. Otherwise, we would be struggling like the rest of the people in the world who don't know, honestly, what they are doing, what's important, how they should be spending their time, what is true, what is not true, what is good, what is evil. We would be floundering. And thank God we have a Torah to guide us so that we can use all of our resources, our energy, our time, our efforts, our enthusiasm, our willpower to be focused and go in a certain direction. So Hashem should bless us with continued success, and especially during these 3 weeks as we make an extra effort to do this. Bibi is speaking to Congress now. Hashem should give him strength and amen to whatever it is he says. All right, ladies, thank you so much. Have a wonderful Shabbos and chazak with whatever you choose to be your Tamid offering. I just want to say, I know we're running over. There's something very special about realizing that Hashem pays attention to the small things that we do, and that the small things we do matter, and that it is considered an offering. It is a Tamid offering, is something, it counts, it makes a difference, and it builds us inside. It's like, you take a little vitamin pill every day. I take a vitamin every day. Like, what's that doing? I say, it's not doing anything. It's just a little thing. It's like, no, it's making me into who I am. All these things, it's the little things count. All right. God is in the details, everybody. So make those details. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful Shabbos.
The hostages should be rescued today, and Bibi should be successful.
And Mashiach should
take
come.
Take care, everyone. Everyone be well.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you. My pleasure. It's good to see all of you.
Thank you, and bye now.
Bye-bye. Marge, are you planning a trip to Denver by any chance in September?
Oh, I was thinking about that. There was a reason I couldn't find my exit button. I don't know, but it's wonderful you'll be there.
I'm so excited to come. It's going to be really fun to see everybody.
You look so happy. I'm so honored to be at these classes.
I'm honored that you are able to do it and that you continue to join us.
Yeah.
It makes me very happy.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I'll think about it. I'll definitely think about it.
Okay, think about it. All right.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Care.
Take good care. Bye-bye. What was that, Cheryl?
It's on my calendar.
Oh, good. Great.
For like a couple times where you couldn't see me, I switched to a bigger screen, but I couldn't figure out how to get the video to show me like you could see me. And I've been playing with that, and I just finally figured it out. So you can see me.
Good for you. Now I can see you.
Yeah.
It's good to see you.
Yeah.
Well, look forward to seeing you in Denver, God willing, soon.
Oh, yeah. That'd be wonderful. Okay. Take care.
Have a great Shabbos.
Yeah. Shabbat shalom. Bye.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.